Welcome everyone to Clear Vision Wednesdays. Today's topic is imagination for better eyesight. And I want to start by quoting from Dr. Bates this is the original book he wrote in 1920, which is 101 years ago. And it's called Perfect Sight Without Glasses. And he talks about in his chapter, no, I don't know the Roman numbers anymore. It's called Imagination as an Aid to Vision. It's the name of the chapter. It's on page 148 in the original book. And he says, we see very largely with the mind and only partly with the eyes. The phenomena of vision depends upon the mind's interpretation of the impression upon the retina. What we see is not that impression, but our own interpretation of it. And so I can kind of go on and on. But so basically, neuroscience has confirmed this. Our vision happens in the visual cortex in the back of the brain, and the retina is actually part of the brain. So about 90% of our vision is actually happening in the brain, not in the eyes, right? And our actual interpretation of what we see. And this is where imagination is really powerful. And the Bates method has so many different imagination practices. And I don't want to confuse you with all these, but the basic idea is that when you can imagine something perfectly, you can also see it perfectly. And that might sound really weird, but I give you an example of a practice that I like to use that I find really successful. This is just one of them, and then I will guide you through a different one live. So as an example, I have here some eye charts, and I have this is the typical Snellen chart, and here is a mini version of it. And so one example of how you can use imagination, and imagination is always tied to memory, because we can only imagine things that we have seen before. I always use this example. If I tell you to imagine a pink elephant, you would have had to see or know what a gray elephant looks like, a real one, right? So imagination is always a combination of things we've seen before, and then kind of changing it into like a different kind of version of that memory. And with the eye chart, the example I like to use, and again, there's probably a bazillion practices in the Bates method, just using the chart and imagination, is let's say you're nearsighted and this chart is at 10 feet, and I have another one there in the background on my wall. That chart is far away, and that big E looks really blurry. But when you have the same chart close up, right, you look at it like maybe like whatever distance is perfect for you. Let's say that E is perfectly clear at this distance, right, like pretty close to your face. You can then use the imagination of that clear E, and the one in the distance is blurry, but they're the same. They look exactly the same. They're just different sizes. And if that chart is really pretty far away, they might actually physically look the same size. And what you can do is you can, the way imagination works most easily is to close your eyes. So you could close your eyes. You look at this letter first, right? Really take a good picture of that letter in your mind with your eyes open. Then you close your eyes and you imagine you have a memory of that perfectly clear letter with the black and the white. And then you open the eyes to the letter on the distance, and that one might look blurry, right? So it might look blurry. So then you look at that, you're like, okay, it looks a little blurry. You close your eyes again. And you can also look at this card again, just to remind yourself how it looks like when it's clear. And one technique I really love to use is, so you have the memory of the blurry E and you have the memory of the clear E, right? The close one was clear, the distance one was blurry. And then you basically put the clear one, as if you had a sticker and you could peel it off and you stick it on the blurry one. So you keep imagining the clear E, and then you blink your eyes open just for a split second to the distance chart, imagining the clear E the whole time, and then you close your eyes again. So a lot of times when we do that like split seconds, using imagination of clarity, and in this case of snow white background and black ink, like really black letters, the letter appears to be totally clear, like a clear flash. So this often happens in the beginning with students. And then the goal is that you practice this, and ideally, you look at it longer and you blink and breathe and the letter stays clear. But that's kind of the concept, like if you cannot imagine the letter clear without glasses, if like you close your eyes and all you see is a fuzzy E or like a gray E or some blurry object, then, maybe using your glasses to get kind of a reference point of how the E looks like clearly is really helpful. So that's why when we can't imagine something, we can't see it. So there's a definite connection to that. And the practice, and here's, by the way, another chart that I prefer for anybody, if you're nearsighted, usually, and this reflects a little bit, but black background and white letters usually work easier if you want to do some kind of chart work with imagination. So this is just wanted to show that. The practice we will be doing today, I call that Pinocchio Nose Drawing. And the whole thing is done in the imagination with your eyes closed. And what you need, right, you don't need anything because it's all in here. But let's say, just to give you some clues, you will need a white piece of paper. And in your imagination, you do this, you don't need it in real life, right? In your imagination, maybe your piece of paper is this size, maybe it's this size, right? This is like half the size, about half the size. So you can totally decide what your piece of paper, what size it is, and you will imagine it really white. And then you will also have much like Pinocchio had a long nose, you imagine that you have like a black pen attached to your nose, like this is a Sharpie, but maybe your pen is thicker, or maybe your pen is like really thin. It's a really like a tiny, tiny fine print one. So you can totally decide what pen you have attached to your nose in your imagination and how big the paper is. And I would just describe the practice. So you imagine that if you're nearsighted, you will imagine this piece of paper. Basically, you want to imagine at your ideal distance. So let's say you are like a -5 diopter. So 20 centimeters is your edge of blur, or where things get blurry. So you would start at like about 20 centimeters in your imagination, right? And if you're farsighted, maybe your ideal distance is like 20 feet in the distance. So you, in your mind, pick a distance, or maybe it's 10 feet, or so whatever your ideal distance is. And even if you have no clarity at any distance, there's still a distance where you see better than at another distance. So begin, and you can do this seated, you can be standing. I'm standing right now, so I have my feet planted on the ground, a little more than hips width apart. Take a few deep breaths, relax your shoulders, maybe wiggle your shoulders a little bit, and then close your eyes. And now in your imagination, you pick your paper size, whatever that paper size is, and then bring that paper, like you maybe move it in and out a little bit, but bring it to your ideal distance. And then pick your pen, and maybe yours is a brush, not a pen, but it's really black ink coming out of that pen, or maybe you have a brush and you dip that into really black paint. And then start by using your imaginary nose pencil and start doodling on your paper. You can draw anything you want, and you move your head along. So I'm doing this here, I'm pretending you keep your eyes closed if you follow along, but I'm basically moving my head along. So my nose is drawing the shapes, and my eyes follow the tip of the pen, noticing how black the lines are that I'm drawing. They're super, super black. And the paper is bright, bright snow white. Maybe doodling is not interesting for you. Maybe you want to draw specific shapes. So you can draw a triangle, you can draw a square, a circle, you can maybe write your name. Whatever you want to do, and keep your attention on the point of your nose pencil, and notice how black it is. And also notice how you there's almost an opposite movement of where you are with your pen. It's almost like the line seems to be moving the oppositional way. And if you don't get that idea, then don't worry about it. Just keep your attention and your imagination on that black pencil, on that whatever you're drawing on your paper, and maybe at some point you want to stop and wipe away what you've drawn so it's not messy, and you start from scratch. And you breathe into the belly, relax your shoulders, keep drawing. Continue the drawing. And then, as you're drawing, if you feel this is really feeling relaxing and it feels good, now if you're nearsighted, you would move that paper slowly further away. So your pencil is getting longer as you keep drawing. And you can decide if the paper, you know, with the perspective of going further away, the paper will get smaller and smaller. Or if you want, you can kind of cheat and keep the paper the same size, even though it goes further in the distance. It's your decision. And if you're farsighted, you start it further in the distance, and you will now slowly bring the paper closer as you continue to draw. And if the paper is, going with the perspective, and let's say you're getting closer because you're farsighted, then you will make bigger head movements, because if the paper is really close and pretty big, you would really, move your head side to side. You would move your head in all kind of directions, depending on what you're drawing. And the further you are in the distance, and if the paper does get smaller, like a real perspective, your drawings, your head movements and would get smaller, and what you're drawing will become smaller or fine. So continue with this practice, breathing, relaxing. Once in a while, maybe get a fresh piece of paper in your mind. Start with something new. Maybe switch to a finer pen, or maybe switch to a thicker pen. And notice when maybe you reach a distance where that perfectly black, clear line that you were drawing now starts to kind of maybe get more fuzzy. And just note in your mind, like, what distance is that where you kind of, for lack of better words, hit a wall where you feel like, now it becomes kind of a strain or an effort. So breathe through, and maybe move the paper a little closer, further away to where you don't feel the strain. So maybe adjust it a little bit. And then on your next exhale, maybe move the paper a little bit further or closer, depending, into that kind of area where you were kind of stuck before. Continue to imagine the paper really white, and the line that you're drawing, your pen really, really black. Super crisp, high contrast. And then we will start finishing this up pretty closely. So now you can move your paper if you want. You can move it kind of slowly back to your ideal distance. Continue drawing, sketching, whatever you're doing. When the paper gets closer, you will make more head movements. The paper will be closer and bigger. If you move it back, if you're farsighted, you move the paper further back out again. Your drawings will be a little smaller, your head movements will be smaller. And from here on, you can, if you wish, you can just continue. You can let that go, let the paper, let the pen, let it all go, and then conclude with a little bit of palming. So cover your closed eyes with your cupped hands. Let go of all the imagination. Take a few deep breaths. And just notice what you feel, what you see in your inner visual field. Think of something pleasant, something that makes you happy. Sometimes you might feel good to imagine some really, really deep, deep black in front of your inner eyes. But the goal is not to strain. So if thinking of black strains you, then think of something else. Think of maybe a different color, a color that you feel really relaxing, or anything else that you like to think of that feels good and relaxing. And then slowly take the hands away from your eyes. You can continue palming. If you watch this as a replay, you can pause and continue to palm. Keep your eyes closed. And then whenever you're ready, let's do a few rounds of what's called flashing, which is just a really brief, like reverse blinking, where you just briefly open your eyes and you don't rip them open. You just do a soft little opening. And maybe if you have a chart in your room or something else, you can kind of, again, this is just a quick flash. So you just open your eyes and close them again. Notice what you see. And then maybe turn your head to a different direction in your room. Open your eyes again. Just a quick little blink, reverse blink. And then maybe one last time, turn into another direction. And again, if you have the chart, you don't have to turn your head in a different direction. You can just use the chart. Leave your eyes open and notice what you see. And then to conclude, we will do 5 quick butterfly blinks. Blink, 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 blink. 5 gentle squeezes. And how my eyes feel super lubricated, and would be great to see. I'm looking at the YouTube right now and notice if there's any comments. There's no comments yet. But yeah, this is a great Pinocchio nose drawing is a really great way to use your imagination of clarity and, you know, drawing whatever you want to draw. And it'll be curious to see where you, when I first started doing this, my background, I'm farsighted and I have presbyopia and I squint and astigmatism. And I noticed I hit that kind of, there was a distance where it got like, you know, I don't know, like about right here, where I felt like anxiety coming up, like, oh my God, the paper is too close to me. And then I was breathing, relaxing, and then slowly getting closer. And the more I practiced this, at the end, I could get really close. But in the beginning, I was kind of like, this is what the point where I was like, it didn't feel good. And maybe if you're nearsighted, you know, you have kind of some imaginary distance of, you know, 5, you know, maybe it's a foot away from you, maybe it's 5 feet or maybe 15 feet, but just notice where is that distance where it feels like, now it feels like kind of anxiety producing, or your heart rate goes up, or you just feel constrained. So practice this and it'll get easier. And as you get farther away, the things become smaller. As you get closer, you can still draw small things, but your paper, right? Your paper will be a lot closer when it's here versus here, unless you want to cheat the perspective and you want to pretend the paper kind of stays the same size. But if you were in real life, a paper that's letter size here would probably be at 20 feet, would probably be like the size of a stamp. So, all right, that's it for today. I'm going to close the YouTube live feed. I hope you enjoyed this little imagination practice, and I see you soon.